so thrilled that Laura and Alex were kind enough to have agreed to doing this webinar with me back in like October, November, and I got them for 2 weeks back to back. I am so thrilled. We are talking about mastering milestones. Laura and Alex are from the premier event planning team of GFS events. They bring with you an absolute enormous wealth of knowledge on event and fundraising. They work exclusively or not-for-profits. We're going to talk today about mastering milestones. Ladies, thank you so much. Where are you joining us from today? And I'll ask people to mark in the chat pod where they're joining us from too, as well as what kind of a charity they're fundraising for.
So I'm joining in today from San Diego, California. So it is not raining now, in case anyone's been seeing that. So we're luckily getting a little bit drier now. So the sun is actually peeking out. Not as cold as it is most places across the US right now.
So, Laura, you're a little chillier.
I'm a little chillier, but we're looking up. I'm coming from Denver, so it's always sunny. When there's 2 days in a row where it's cloudy, everyone freaks out. So we're looking up.
And I just want to do a shout out to the rest of our team that's located in Seattle, Washington, where it's probably maybe a little bit warmer than Denver, but a lot more rainy than San Diego. So.
I invited these ladies here, like I said, because GFS Events is just second to none in their fabulous events. They'll get at the end, they'll talk about their social media and things like that, but they are a great follow on Instagram. They put up tons of behind the scenes, some of their events, and it's a whole lot of fun. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Laura and Alex, to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori, and thanks for having us here. We always love partnering with Oktra and your wonderful webinars, and also just you as a partnership. Absolutely love the platform. And thank you everyone today for joining us for Mastering Milestones Part 2. Hopefully the tips and tricks Laura and I share with you today can help ease that event stress for day of event, post-event, as well as your prepping. So we are here to talk about how to successfully check off those milestones. For those of you that attended part 1 of our webinar, welcome back. And for those of you tuning in for the first time, welcome. So we are going to share tips and tricks about how to successfully check off your day of and post-event to-do list. My name is Alex Springberg, and I'm the Director of Business Development and Special Events with GFS Events. I have been in the nonprofit event industry for about 6 years now. I love working alongside organizations to help manage their event stress, and I'm super excited to be joined today with my colleague, Laura Jasdis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Jasdis, and I'm a fundraising and special events producer with GFS Events. And I have about 7 years experience in the event industry, and I'm super excited to be here today because I'm looking forward to sharing some information on what you should be thinking about when you're planning your next event. But before we dive in, I did want to share just a little bit more about GFS Events. We're a full service event management company, and we specialize in creating exceptional and successful fundraising events for nonprofits across the US. And our mission is to raise more money for your organization than you could do on your own. And so on the screen here, you can see the different types of events we produce, and these include galas, auctions, races and walks, golf tournaments, luncheons and breakfasts, and also conferences and community events. And some of the services we provide to our clients include event management, vendor coordination, sponsorship support, and also volunteer management. And so in today's webinar, we'll be presenting information on the tasks that should be on your day of event checklist, and as well as your post-event to-do list. And so first, I want to discuss the day of highlights you should be checking off your to-do list. These include checking in with your vendors, running through your program, queuing up your volunteers, setting up your auction, making sure registration is good to go, including training those on your check-in computers, Most importantly, enjoying the moment. And finally, we'll talk about guest checkout. And we'll go over each of these in a little more detail as we move along in the webinar. So first, of the many tasks on your plate, I know there are a lot, during the day of the event, checking in with your vendors is a very important one. Knowing when they arrive and what they need is crucial to a successful event. Vendors are your partners. They're your teammates working towards a successful event. And being teammates mean they deserve clear communication and expectations before they arrive. And they should have their know before you go information sent to them a week before the event. So when they arrive, they know exactly what to do and where to go. Another thing to keep in mind is that some vendors also require payment to be handed to them via check the day of the event. So make sure you bring those along to the event if that's the case for any of your vendors. And I'm going to go over each of the vendors you see on this screen, the venue, catering, etc., and what you should be checking in with them about on the day of your event. And so first, once you arrive at the venue, you'll want to find your rep or salesperson you've been in contact with. If the room is already set up, look at the layout with them. Make sure you have all the tables, chairs you need, and also you need to confirm the bar placement because they'll probably set those up as well. Also let them know of any concerns you may have. Is the stage not up and your event starts in 2 hours? Are you looking around the room and you see that you need another table for your dessert dash? Let them know your requests. They're there to help make your event the best that it can be. And we also recommend starting a texting group chat with your venue rep. During the event, it can be difficult to find someone from the venue. So if you need something in a timely manner, the venue majority of the time is open to having you text them to let them know what you need. And this could be an extra seat at a table for an unexpected guest, or even a mop for a spilled drink. And so similar to the venue, meet with your rep from the catering team to discuss any last minute changes. Confirm counts are correct with them as well. Does a table need 11 entrees instead of 10? Are there 300 people coming instead of 290? You should have given them a guarantee a week or so in advance, but if your number has gone up a little bit since then, they do need to know that. Also verify the meal choices counts with them. How many beef, chicken, vegetarian, for example, do you have? Show them also in person what your meal indicators look like. Previous to the event, you should have discussed that with your caterer on how you will be indicating those meals with them. Some of our clients like to have meal indicators in the guest bidder packets. This can be a bright colored small slip of paper that says chicken or beef on it that they'll take out of their packet and place at their place settings. Other clients prefer us not to hand them a packet at registration, and we just let catering know how many beef, chicken, or vegetarian are at each table. For example, table 1 over there has 7 beef and 3 vegetarian. Also solidify the bar components and ingredients are on site. If you have a champagne wall like the one on the screen, make sure catering knows where that's located and when to put out the champagne. Also exercise, and this is very important, your quality control duties and try the food. Of course, reserve an entree for yourself ahead of time because everyone needs to eat, but go ahead and try an hors d'oeuvre or two when you're running around. And next, we have our audio, visual, sound, and lights. And these people typically have a lot of gear and items to load in. I'm sure you've all seen those cases that they wheel in. On the day of the event, greet them at the easiest point of entry and let them know where they can load in. Once they have everything set up, you'll want to walk through them your event slideshow. We recommend sending them the slideshow ahead of time, typically a few days before they arrive, so they already have it queued up on their computers. Confirm the order of the slides and also run the videos if you have any during your program. Make sure the sound is calibrated correctly. We had a recent client when the AV ran the videos in our pre-run through to test them, the sound was completely off. Their mouths were moving and then the sound would come a few seconds later. And so we caught this early, thankfully. And so this allowed them time to figure out the issue and we reran the video once more perfectly before the event. Figure out also what lighting you also want in the room. Do you want the mood to match your theme, collateral? Do you also want the lights, or you could also want your lights to match your overall branding? Lights make a huge difference, so I suggest to take the time to work with the lighting team to get those set up how you want them. One of our clients last fall, just as an example, wanted to do a rebrand announcement during their program. So the first half of the night was lit up like their old colors. And then when they announced the new logo, the lights in the room automatically switched to their new logo colors. And it was a very unique way to share this update and announcement. And you'll also want to run through the run of show and program with the AV team, but I'll discuss that in upcoming slides. Next, we want to check in with our photographer. So when your photographer arrives, check in with them and hand them a paper copy of the shot list that you sent over to them a few weeks ago. Go over the list, clarify any questions if they have any, and also be sure to show them important spots in the room. For example, here's the step and repeat we'd like you to stand in front of and get pictures of people. Here's also the photo booth we have. Here's the stage. We want you at XYZ time to take pictures of speakers. Here's also the silent auction. We also like to get pictures of the room all set up with no guests in them. So be sure to build in time for your photographer to capture those early moments before guests arrive. Next, you'll want to check in with your auctioneer and/or MC. Have them meet with other program speakers so they're familiar with who will be coming up on the stage during the program, whether that be your board president, staff member, etc. Some of our auctioneers also prefer that they train the recorders and spotters. If that is the case with your auctioneer, make sure to allow time for that training to take place. Also confirm any last-minute additions to the program. For an event in the fall, we got last-minute, once-in-a-lifetime Seahawks tickets donated by a guest. And by last minute, I mean about 3 hours before guests were set to arrive. And so we called the auctioneer immediately when we found out that this was coming through, and we discussed where to place these tickets in our run of show. But when the auctioneer arrived, we walked through it in person, confirmed what we talked about and how that would work in the program. And on that note, make sure you keep your auctioneer MC in the loop with any changes. Do they need to know of any auction package changes? Can a package be sold twice in the room? Also, did a speaker get sick and now can't come? Who's taking their place? These are all items your auctioneer or MC should be made aware of as they're driving the program for your audience. Next, we have our entertainment. So when your entertainment arrives, show them the area or room where they can change, get ready, put on makeup, and also set their things down. This should be like a green room that is separate from your main event space. To provide a special touch for them, you could also have water bottles or snacks set up in the room as well. Once they drop off their things, be sure to show them where they will be stationed or set up for the event. And also go over their start and end times so you're all on the same page. And here is our program run through that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So on the day of the event, you'll want to hold your program run through. This program run through is where you'll want to test the sound with all of your program speakers, auctioneer MC, go through your slides, and also check those videos once more to make sure they're working well. So first, gather all your speaking parties. This includes all talking heads in the program. And this could be your executive director, board president, or even someone who has benefited from your services. Have them read their speech into the microphone to get comfortable being on stage and under the lights. Also go over the transition from what the MC says before to the speaker so they can get comfortable when knowing when their cue is to go on stage. If you have a live auction with sound bumps, test them. Sound bumps, if you don't know, are clips of fun music we like to play a few seconds before each auction item and the fun dessert dash. So confirm with AV that each of those sound bumps are working and the AV levels are calibrated correctly. One trick I recommend when someone is practicing speaking is I always like to walk around the room. I like to test out which spots need more sound, which spots need less sound. If it doesn't sound right or you can't hear in one spot, let your sound team know and they will fix it. And when the speakers are talking, also make sure the AV has the correct slide up on their screen. Make sure their name's spelled correctly, their title is correct. Run it like you would run the program guests are in their seats. And this ensures smooth transitions and makes for a seamless show. Next on your list should be getting your volunteers ready. Make sure catering has your volunteer meal available when volunteers arrive. And similar to the green room, we recommend having a separate volunteer space where they can take breaks, eat a meal, and keep their stuff safe while volunteering. We find that when volunteers sit inside the main event room, we sometimes lose them to watching the fun program on stage, similar to like a guest. We want them volunteering during the event, not watching it, which is why we like to have a separate volunteer room. Be sure to post a copy of your volunteer schedule in that volunteer room so volunteers can double check what they're doing and when. Have your volunteer lead who did the outreach for the event be the volunteer point of contact for that night. I had an event last summer where we needed volunteers because a couple of folks didn't show up, and I immediately went to the volunteer lead and I said, I need 2 people at registration in 5 minutes. And she gathered 2 people for me and sent them my way. And it was so helpful having someone else manage that part, because we all know as an event lead, you are already juggling so many things at once on event day. And you should also host in-person volunteer trainings. And this includes showing them how to record their raffle sales, how to work the registration computers, and where greeters should stand, to name a few. And for your auction setup, you'll want to begin to set your tables for your silent auction. And as Alex mentioned last week, if you're here for part 1, hopefully you left the cellophane at home and are planning on displaying your items in a very approachable way. Make sure you have your display sheets that explain the item if needed. Don't forget to place those bid sheets in front of each item. Check to make sure that your bid sheets include the title of the item number, description if needed, increments where guests can bid by writing their name, bid number, and also the buy it now price. If you're doing mobile bidding, don't forget to have a QR code or easy instructions for your guests on how to start bidding. You will also want to set up your live auction display table. This allows guests to view the live auction items during the cocktail hour so they can think about what to bid on during the live auction. And you can see an example on the screen on the left-hand side there. And make sure you also have all the supplies you need, pens, tape, easels, etc., to have your auction run smoothly, and really utilize that supply list we also talked about in last week's webinar. And also don't forget to organize your tangible items with their slips, as well as any certificates for items that may not have a tangible item. And once your auction is set up and you've met with all your vendors, it's time to start checking people in. And we discussed this in part 1, but as a reminder, make sure you have the right amount of people at registration. If you feel like the year before your lines were moving very slow, go ahead and add 1 or 2 more volunteers. You can check people in and get that line moving. And we also recommend, like we discussed in part 1 last week, having that solutions table. So that person at the solutions table knows how to link, unlink guests, where to put new guests, how to activate, reactivate tickets. If any volunteers checking people in don't know how to help a guest, simply send them to the solutions table and we can help them out there. This allows the check-in volunteers to quickly get people moving through the line. And I'm sure a few of you here in the webinar have already used Octria to check someone in, but if you haven't, I'm here to tell you it is very simple. So first you'll just type their last name in the search box, and when their name pops up, tell the person pulling the packets their bidder number so they can pull the packet for you. Ask the guest which credit card they would like to put on file for the night. And as we emphasized last week, do not ask would they like to put a credit card on file, but which credit card they want to put on file. And once you swipe their card, collect their email, phone number, and address, and finalize the check-in by clicking the check-in button. Easy. One feature I love, and I wanted to highlight here, is the percentage. You can see it on the screen, the percentage checked-in meter at the top of the bidder check-in page. As an event lead, this allows you to monitor guest flow. And one example I want to give is I was a lead on an event last summer and everyone was late. Everyone was late getting there. It was a perfect storm of reasons. It was raining. It was a Friday, so we were dealing with rush hour traffic. We heard down the pipeline there were tons of accidents on the road. So I kept an eye on that bidder check-in meter to see where we were with guests of who had been checked in and who hadn't, and whether or not we needed to push back the start time of the event to allow guests to arrive safely. And now it's the moment you've been working towards the last few months. It's event time. I love the moment in the office. Oh my gosh, it's happening. This is my favorite time. And to me, the most rewarding part of planning nonprofits events is that moment on event day where even through the fast-paced energy of the day, you take a moment and you cherish people from all walks of life uniting under one roof towards a common goal. And I just want to emphasize, don't forget to take that moment. It's what you've worked so hard to come to fruition. So enjoy it. Connect with your donors, say hi to those who you appreciate, you haven't seen in a while, and don't forget to follow your run of show and script to adapt to any hiccups along the way. You've got this. And now, as quickly as the event started, the event is over. You've raised so much money. You've crushed those fundraising goals. And at GFS, we always strive to have a smooth checkout process for guests. It's the last moment they remember before leaving for the night. So to do so, we recommend creating an auction winner whiteboard. And you can see one on the screen here. This could be an actual whiteboard or on screens after the event where you display the auction winners for the night. This is an easy report you can pull in Octria to get the information in a timely manner. And this allows guests to look quickly at the board for their bin number or name, see if they're on there, and they know they need to go to the registration table to pick up an item or a certificate. Checkout should really be where guests can come up and ask questions or give requests. And a lot of requests we get are, can I write a check for my donation I just gave? I want to pay with my donor advice fund. How do I do that? I have a different credit card I want to pay with. And these are all easy items we can take care of for our guests. We always get asked as people are leaving, do I need to check out? Typically the answer is no. If they didn't win an item and already have a credit card on file, we let them know. We'll charge their card and send them a receipt, which Alex will be covering how to do in a little bit. And don't forget to hand out guest gifts as well. If that is something you'd like to do. This could be a chocolate, a branded mug, or something else special that they can remember the night by. And so now, just picture it, you're at home after the event, taking a much needed hot bath, thinking about what needs to be done when you get to the office on Monday. And so Alex is gonna share next what should be on your post-event checklist.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Now for the second part of the webinar, I'm going to share best practices to make sure that you can continue keeping your guests happy. I'll share practices for reconciliation steps. I'll dive into charging cards, pulling reports, and post-event communication. But first, I actually kind of want to start where Laura left off about your guests checking out. Before you dive into your audit, I want to highlight a few data entry pointers that will set you up for success. One of the most commonly asked questions that we get from clients is, should we provide guests with their final receipts the evening of the event? And the answer is no. And the reason is that as an organization, you don't want to commit to this and set that expectation for your guests. There is not a rush to charge guests the evening of the event. By rushing to send out a receipt, you are opening yourself up to mistakes that will cost you more time and money to fix than if you had just done it right the first time. Our team waits to charge cards until the next business day or two, because this also allows guests to reach out to you with any important payment requests. Like Laura mentioned before, guests will come up to registration with specific payment requests like their donor advice fund or a check. If someone wants to pay that way, that's totally fine. No one wants to reverse a $10,000 credit card charge the day after the event. And by dedicating that extra business day to double check that everything is entered correctly, you are not only allowing yourself grace and flexibility, you are ensuring that your final numbers are the most accurate. Now, our team at GFS has a method to the madness for data entry the evening of the event. First, we want to make sure that the person doing the data entry has a private area or room, like the volunteer room, so they can't be disturbed. Break the data entry down by revenue generator section. For example, we will enter the dessert dash, then the raise a paddle, and then the raffle entry. we have each data entry person on our team slowly go line item by line item, entering in each item along the way, and they are also matching it up as they go and checking it off. So if someone does run up to you and they need you to do something, you can easily take a look at your piece of paper and know where you left off. And when someone is working on the dessert dash, let's say, that means they're not only entering the amount donated, they're making sure that they are typing in the bidder number to make sure it matches the last name. I don't need to tell you how many people get their own bidder numbers incorrect, but the one thing, hopefully, that they don't get incorrect is their last name. Hence, the double check as we go. Another way that our team likes to double check as we are entering data is to make sure that the totals for each revenue generator section match the paper sheets as well as in the platform. For example, if we sold 100 raffle tickets at $50 each, we want to make sure Octoroy has $5,000 worth of raffle tickets. And you can use a similar process for other revenue generators. But when it comes to a Raise the Paddle, our team actually likes to take a slightly different approach. Our first rule is to make sure that we always have at least 3 Raise the Paddle recorders at the event. After the event, we take all 3 of the Raise the Paddle sheets and cross-check all 3 sheets to confirm that the recorders have the same information. Now, when they don't, we typically have at least 2 of them that do match. But we don't only double check to make sure the Raise the Paddle level is accurate across all 3 sheets, we also re-listen to a recording of the Raise the Paddle from the evening of the event to ensure nothing was missed. From there, we use one sheet that we reference for our data entry. Data entry is all about those double checks. That way you set yourself up for a much cleaner audit. Again, like I mentioned before, you want to make sure you are slowly working through this. Now, after that data entry, it's time for auditing, the real moment of truth. After those initial data entry steps, our team has multiple auditing checkpoints. The first step in our audit is double checking that our team entered the correct bidder numbers. After so much time staring at all combinations of numbers, it can happen when an incorrect bid number is entered. That is why during our audit, our team will actually take the sheets they are referencing and match up the bidder numbers each line by line to make sure it's been entered correctly into the system. And again, we're checking it off number by number. This is super helpful when you're auditing your live auction, silent auction, and that Raise the Paddle. Now, our next step in the audit is to ensure the amounts and quantities are correct. Going back to our dessert dash data entry example, our team will add up the total of each table using the physical sheets and compare it to the total listed in the Octoroy platform to make sure that the numbers match down to the exact cent. And our team does this for everything, from the auction to the raffle. We ensure that the total, what is on our paper copies, match what is in the platform. Now, what happens when your audit doesn't match up? To start, our team again works revenue generator by revenue generator and switch who is looking at each section. Sometimes it can be as simple as messy handwriting. Other times it can be an incorrect quantity was recorded. Once the audit has been finalized and your numbers do match, the next step is to review your bidder statements and confirm you're ready to charge cards. Now, a large part of why we suggest that you do not charge the cards the evening of the event is to make sure that you are aware of your guest preferred payment preferences. While we do ensure to collect credit cards, guests prefer to pay in a variety of ways, some of which can actually be better for your organization so you don't have to pay the credit card fees. Those other payment methods are what we talked about before, such as the checks, donor advice funds, and sometimes there's guests that want to split up payment of an auction item between multiple people. After the audit, I encourage clients to review the bidder statements. And fun fact, Octoroy actually has a wonderful feature where you can review all of your bidder statements before you push them out and charge cards. This is super helpful to review with your finance team in case they are aware of any specific scenarios that you might not know about. The goal of viewing those bidder statements is that you and the team can identify any long-term donors who might have those specific payment preferences. Other times, it's just taking an extra step in communication. For example, I have a client that will take the time to reach out and call each donor that has given or it has a total balance due over $2,500 on their statement to confirm that we're okay to charge their card. Now, I know not everyone has that sort of bandwidth to do this, but I do encourage you to identify a number that you can handle. Maybe it's over 5,000, maybe it's over 10, and make those calls. While our team is working alongside a client, we want to make sure that the data reconciliation meeting happens post-event as well. So that's an opportunity for our team and the client and the finance team to come together to talk about any issues that might have happened the evening of the event and just re-go over who we're going to charge. And like I mentioned, taking these extra steps can really help you to avoid extra credit card processing fees and also refunds. No one likes to do those the next day. And those extra moments spent confirming your donors' payment preferences can also ensure that you are doing right by your donors and leave them with a more positive experience. Now, after you have had the chance to touch base with your donors, it's time to move forward with charging. Even though we have worked through a very meticulous data entry and audit process, it never hurts to continuously be checking your final charge list to make sure that none of those guests that requested other payment methods are on the charge list. And when I refer to a charge list, I'm actually referencing Octria's batch checkout feature. This is a huge time saver and so convenient to utilize. So when I feel like I'm ready to charge cards, I go to the batch checkout screen and review all of the names on the list to make sure that none of the guests that requested to pay with other methods are listed. If their name is not on the charge list, then Octria won't charge them. It's super helpful to be able to charge all of your guests with just one click. And once you move through batch charging, you can actually see on the screen in real time which cards did and did not go through. However, there's also another way to view that information, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get to reports. Now, you'll notice that in my example on the screen, I didn't click the button that says send statements on payment, and I did that on purpose. I want to make sure that everyone is receiving the correct receipt, not just the people that I charged that one moment. Whether they receive a receipt that shows the confirmation they have paid or if they still owe money is super important. And I actually am able to push out one receipt to anyone that has activity in my Octria auction, and Octria will automatically be the one to send the correct receipt on my behalf. For example, on the screen, I have the same receipt. One is formulated where if a donor owes money, they see that extra note about having a balance. The other receipt reflects what a guest sees if they have paid. I am able to utilize a custom Octria feature for the text box that automatically triggers whether a donor will see that message or if it'll be hidden. It saves me so much time knowing that each receipt sent, regardless of it is to someone that still owes money or not, will be correct. Now, speaking of making sure that receipts are correct, don't forget about adding your fair market value in. This is an easily skipped step. For most of your items, donors will tell you their exact value. Now, a lot of clients do come to us and tell us that they do not have a value of an item and they just want to deem it priceless. While some items are marketed as priceless, at the end of the day, you do need to provide your donors with the monetary value of every item. For example, some organizations will auction off items such as a lunch with a favorite teacher, a parking spot, or maybe it's art that's been created by your community. Each of these do have a market value. You'll just need to get creative. For the lunch with a favorite teacher, it's the cost of the lunch. For the parking spot, it could be an estimate of what a parking pass would be. And for the art, it would be the cost of the supplies. From there, Octria will automatically calculate your fair market value on your behalf. You just need to make sure that it is entered correctly under your item. Again, so much time saved by having Octria do that work for you. Now, moving away from receipts is your post-event communication. And yes, they are different. After all of your hard work, you cannot neglect that you still need to foster that relationship with your donors. A receipt does not do that. I recommend sending out another round of communication to thank your donors and share more about what their impact has on your organization. That can look like an email sharing a personal story from a community member, a phone call from a board member, or even a handwritten thank you note. And be sure to keep up that communication. And don't be afraid to bring supporters in that didn't attend. That way they can be a part of the experience. That could be your supporters that donated in lieu of attendance, or possibly community members that won't go to an event or they can't. Share your story, and sometimes you will find that people will still be compelled to give post-event. And one of the biggest tips I tell clients is to make sure that their next event runs even better is to continue that donor love. Do not involve your supporters only once a year at your largest fundraising event. Continue that conversation and turn them into champions for your organization. Let them know about that latest success story. Share the pictures of your members. Keep it personal and concise. But don't end that thank you train with just your donors. You couldn't have pulled off an event without the support of your amazing members. That it could include your volunteers, table captains, your board, your vendors. Do not forget that you are laying down the foundation for future events and relationships to come. I have some clients that come to us asking about the best ways to recruit and train volunteers. And at GFS events, we always make volunteers feel like a priority. During the event, we make sure they are taken care of and have had a meal break. Like Laura mentioned before, everyone needs to eat. And during that process, during the event, we let them know how invaluable they are as well. And it's also important to have that volunteer coordinator to make sure that volunteers can have any questions and needs addressed, like Laura was mentioning earlier. And that same process goes for your vendors. Let them know how much they mean to you and how thankful you are. Establishing a team year after year will only make your event planning process that much easier. At GFS events, we prefer to partner with the organizations that we work with year after year so we continue to grow and improve upon the event planning process. Now, you can take your time diving into your financials. Octria has a wonderful reporting section that can pull reports on your behalf. Post-event, clients will ask me the breakdown of each section, and Octria actually has a way to pull different types of reports so you are able to look out the breakdown for each revenue generator. Now, my recommendation for report pulling post-event includes the all better income report and also the outstanding accounts report like I was talking about earlier. You can take this information from your reports and use it to talk about during your debrief. You can talk about how did your revenue totals line up to your budget? What was the average spend per person? How did your raise the paddle strategy go? This is all super valuable information that you can take with you into your post-event debrief. And speaking upon the event planning process and improving it, the last post-event milestone I want to touch on is the debrief. I like to steer my clients into thinking about the debrief as a way not to point out what's wrong, but what went right. I encourage you to celebrate your team and look for room for improvement. You can always improve, but make sure you are taking that time to reflect on what you did right and focus on the positive. A great way to do this is get feedback from your guests. Send them a post-event survey. Ask them, what was your favorite part of the program? Was it the mission talking? You were talking about the mission? Or was it some sort of fun game that you did to engage everybody? Or is there something that guests wanted to learn more about? Did they want to know more about your mission? And talk about those questions and their answers with your internal partners and vendors as well. Now, I hope that you're able to come away from this webinar knowing the best ways to check off those milestones for your day of event task list, record your data entry in a way that makes as little mistakes as possible, tips and tricks to a thorough audit, and continuing the important conversations with your donors. Thank you everyone for joining us today for Mastering Milestones Part 2. If you've joined us for Part 1, we really appreciate you coming back to hear more from our team. And I want to do another shout out to Lori and the wonderful Octria team. We love partnering with you and appreciate you having us join you for this webinar. We have also put together a one-pager that has all of the information we presented today. If you would like to get that one-pager along with our newsletter, just go ahead and scan the QR code that's on the screen. We're also offering a free special 30-minute consultation for anyone that attended this webinar to connect with us about any questions you might have for your upcoming event. You can also visit gfsevents.org to schedule your consultation or even to learn more about it. And like Lori was mentioning earlier, you're welcome to follow us on social media where we share event insights and tips. And I know there are a couple of questions, but I'll throw it over to you, Lori.
Thank you so much. This was jam-packed with information, and I have a couple questions that people ask us all the time, but I'll pen those to the end because the people in the room started with a couple that I think are pretty generic for everybody also. First question came in from Michelle. Michelle asks, how many people do you recommend for check-in? Their event includes 550 to 600 attendees. Do you have a recommendation for that?
Yeah, we certainly do. Typically, our rule of thumb is we like to think of 1 or maybe 2 people per 50 people checking in. So for 550 or 600, you're probably looking at a minimum of 12. And I wouldn't count your solutions person in that count. We always count them as 0, they're person 0, just because we want them focusing on troubleshooting and fixing those client profiles and credit cards and things like that. So I would say a minimum of 12. Ideally for 600, I would err on the caution of maybe 14 or 15 if you could swing it, but definitely a minimum of 12 for that.
Right. And I think it all comes down to how much time have you spent with the volunteers and training them. If they're all panicked and they're not trained up, you're going to need a lot more people because it's going to move a lot slower. But if they are trained up, and if you've gotten, I know in the Milestones one, we talked about grabbing information from guests in advance. That all goes into the continuous flow of guests flowing through your desk and interacting with them. So I did put the link.
I'd recommend that too, Lori. Going off of that is sending those register your credit card, putting that information in ahead of time will definitely ease a lot of that stress and get the line moving a lot quicker.
For sure. You guys, or you ladies, did an amazing job on that first webinar, and it talked about, the 3 emails that should go out and prepping people. So this is part 2, and for real, watch part 1 if you haven't seen it yet. Next question came in asking about, what about charging for auction items that they've won? So I think that was in regards to, we'll charge their card later. Do you let them walk out the door with the auction items that they've won? Or do you charge for those while they're in the room?
Great question. You do let them walk out the door with the auction item before they have paid. And the reason is that if someone's there, we have their card on file. We already know how to follow up with them. We know they're going to pay. We've never had an issue where someone hasn't paid. It's just always been about the method of the payment, like we mentioned before. And we do let people go home with those items, like we're mentioning. So even if they come up to registration with the silent, or we're giving them in the room, we do, like Laura was mentioning before, do all of that pre-work to make sure we have cards on file ahead of time. So we do have that safety net underneath us to make sure we will have a payment method. It's just more about how are we going to charge them if they want to change that up? Because hopefully people are spending much more than they like, or than they planned on. It's more than they originally thought, and they just might want to change how they're paying.
Awesome. Next question came in from David. What is the best way to train volunteers during check-in, data entry, and checkout? We plan to use high school student volunteers.
Yeah, and I saw, Joanna, you respond to that. That is what we would recommend, inviting them to do a virtual training, walking them through how this works. This is what you will be doing. And then, of course, come early to grab food. I know high schoolers love to eat. So keep that in mind, but also to do that training early on so that they say, okay, I know that I went to the training online. Now I see it in real time. This is what's happening. And just making sure they're comfortable with the software too.
Absolutely. And the high schoolers, they need the volunteer hours for graduation anyway, so they will take as many as they can get if they can do it easily. I usually bump up their hours. 90 minutes, you were here for 2 hours plus, that sort of thing. A little bit of gray area, but it's amazing. I use a lot of high school volunteers also, and they do an incredible job. The high schoolers are so fast at picking up this information. They are an incredible resource. And luckily, if you can have them come back for the next couple of years and they bring along their friends, they're up and running even faster. That's been my experience with the high school volunteers. Yeah. I see somebody asked about consultation. Alex, you were kind enough to drop that in there. Thank you so much. I do have a question or a comment that we can kind of chat about here, roundtable-ish. You guys do a great job in making sure that there are photos of everything, the video, and people always ask us, how do we get people to come to our event? How do we get people to come to their event? And I try to back them up to their previous event. What happened at your last event? Was it smooth? Do you have photos? Do you have video to hype that up? And you guys nailed it on the head when you were talking about grabbing all this information, all these visuals, because you are setting it up for the next event so that people do have an incredible experience. Can you just chat about that for a sec?
Yeah. I think for us, it's having that continuous conversation. People are there for your event because they want to support your mission, whether they're new and they want to learn more about it, or they've been a supporter for 15 years. So still making people feel valued, having that continuous conversation. And like I was mentioning before, not doing it just once a year to ask them for money. Have a thank you call with them. Just do a thank you bank where your board just calls people to say thank you. No other ask. People like to come when they feel appreciated, and don't be afraid to ask, whether that's, what could we do better? Or, hey, do you want to save the date for this event? Will you attend? Yes or no? I think that's the biggest thing too, is just making sure you're having that continuous conversation with multiple touch point with your donors over the year. So that way they don't feel like they haven't heard from you in 12 months. And the only time they hear from you is from money. Is for money.
I have another question. It's a little off topic, but it's still on topic for you guys because you do everything. This question comes up frequently from our demos and questions that come in. People ask us, because we were talking about run a show, should we have people on stage or should we have them on a video? And how do you decide which, where, and how to fit that in?
Yeah, to answer that, I think it would depend. Like, for example, someone who's across the country and they can't get to the event, we have them come in through on the screen. But definitely in person, I would say is preferred. You just feel the emotion in the room. They can connect with people, eye contact. It's all of those things that you get in person that you wouldn't get if there was a video. But I say that to say that we do both, right? Like we show a Raise the Paddle video that is amazing. It tells a great story about someone, like, for example, we had an event in the fall who was a free clinic, and they had a man on there who really benefited from the services. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, and it was super impactful. But then, later on, we did have an in-person ask. Like, we kind of it's like a 50-50, we use both, and they're both super effective. It's really about diving into that storytelling piece and what you want folks to see.
Thanks. And I see somebody did ask about scheduling a consultation. I just want to circle back and remind the group that GFS is located in the Pacific Northwest, but you guys will help groups out all over North America, correct?
Absolutely. We will go anywhere anyone needs any event support. Like we mentioned earlier, I'm in California, Laura's in Denver. A big chunk of our team, of course, is in Seattle. So we do a lot of events across the Pacific Northwest, but anywhere an organization has need for us, we have had that experience doing events across the country.
Awesome. And what I'm hearing throughout everything in the first one and the second one is there's no shortcuts to anything. You absolutely have to plan. You absolutely have to see the people. They showed on here how they double, triple check everything. You can't do all this on the fly. You have to have a plan on how you're going to plan it, and then you need to implement and execute on that. Do you want to kind of reiterate that piece of it about how GFS works and why that's so important to bring in sometimes the pros so that the organizations can talk to their donors and circulate and obviously maybe even take a bite of the hors d'oeuvre, like you said, on the fly?
Yeah. I think for us, we want to take it a step further. We don't want you to take a bite. We want you to sit down and have a glass of wine and actually relax and step away from registration, step away from the stress. For us, we try to come in and act as an extension of your development team. We want to be there to handle all of the logistical elements. So that way you are focusing, Lori, like what you're saying, is truly on those donor relationships, the sponsorship relationships. You're doing the important work of laying the foundation and setting up your organization for success. So people are spending time in the room, enjoying themselves, learning more about what your organization can do and the impact it has on the community. And you're leaving really all of those details, those minute pieces, those fires to a team like us, or an event team in general. We're really there to be your partner, and we partner with people large organizations where they have their own event team with 3 people working on the event, and we work with the people who it's the me, myself, and I's, where they're doing everything, so we can help take some of that stress off. your workload. We can't remove all your stress, but we'll try to remove as much as possible.
I love it. You guys just have an absolute calm amongst your team, and it's such a pleasure to spend time with you. GFS has listed their social media on here. I'm going to also drop in here our Facebook group, Auction Team Talk. I always say this, but it really is the nicest page on Facebook. People are always asking each other, what are you doing for your sponsorship levels? How are you handling your check-ins? Questions that are just asked here, you can ask it to other people that are running their auction and event fundraisers, and GFS events, as well as some auctioneers and some other professionals hang out on that page too. So sometimes you'll get some answers from them as well. It is my pleasure to have you guys on our webinar stage. My webinar stage is always open to the GFS team, any day, anytime. I always wish people bids that soar. I hope you crush your fundraising goals, but I'll leave the last word up to you. Alex, Laura, who's first, who's last?
Oh.
Alex, you always get the last one, so I'll let you take it.
Okay. I was thinking first. I was just again, yeah. Thank you, Lori. Thanks everyone for being here. Again, same thing with the consultation. Whether you want to talk to us about ideas, or if you just want to talk events, or you do want some event support, we're happy to chat about all of it. And this time, I'm actually going to throw it over to Laura to close it out.
I never get the last word.
I talk a lot.
Of course, echoing that, but also the QR code, there is that one pager that we find pretty helpful. And like Lori and Alex said as well, our social media, we post those pictures Lori was talking about, but also we write a blog and we have a newsletter. So we'd love to have you follow us along.
Okay, I'm going to steal the last word too then, because you did mention your emails. And when it comes into my email list, my inbox, it is one of the ones that I always click first as soon as it pops up at the top. So sorry, I said I would give you the last word, but sorry.
It's okay, Lori. Okay, we love you.
Don't be sorry.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.